Hi, y'all. I'm Ixepala. I came across this song by Public Image Lit called Rise, and I thought I'd do a review of it. Public Image Lit is Johnny London, or known as Johnny Rotten. It's his project after the famous Sex Pistols. I always found Johnny Rotten to be an interesting character. Um, really, um, uh, you know, explicitly, deliberately um, countercultural or deliberately contrarian. I think that can produce some interesting results, and I think in the case of Johnny Rotten, it has. Some punk rockers criticize the Sex Pistols and say they were like a manufactured band, and I think that's legitimate, really, criticism in a way, but I think it's also very interesting because yeah, they were kind of picked and even groomed in a way to be what they were. But they were picked and groomed by someone who is very much in the left wing punk rock tradition himself. Malcolm McLaren was part of the British wing of the situationist movement. So he actually has some left wing credentials, as it were. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. He's sort of a left wing Andy Warhol, and Andy Warhol is not left wing actually. So it's sort of interesting to really think about it that way. Um, and he intended this. He intended to manufacture rebellion. Manufactured rebellion is, not expected. Um, but I think Johnny Rotten kind of has his own thing, even apart from Malcolm McLaren, and apart from the Sex Pistols. And Public Image Lit is, I guess, some a little bit of him exploring that, albeit maybe not always as interesting as the Sex Pistols. Still worth a listen. This song Rise, sonically, it kind of sounds like maybe early, like the stuff of the era, sort of like U2 or something. Not especially remarkable, sort of jangly, but also like some like almost major sounding synthesizer and that kind of a thing. Um, but the lyrics are kind of interesting. And in the lyrics, it's like Johnny Rotten. He says, "I could be wrong. I could be right. I could be I could be white. I could be black. I could be black. I could be white." And he says something about um, your time has come. Your second skin. It's weird. It's like like in Buddhism or Christianity, or like a new birth or something. But he also says the gains are low, the risks are high. So he's talking about how maybe the system is kind of rigged against everybody, no matter what kind of identity you sort of try to assume to make it through. There's not much to be gained anymore, and like he's speaking from like in the 80s when it was written, and could be it's kind of true today. Um, and then there's this part about like the written word being false in itself, and that uh, human to human interaction. Maybe he's implying that human human interaction is more authentic than the written word, which is like an old idea. It's very goes right back to like the beginning of philosophy. Plato said things like that. That's why he wrote in dialogue. So some he's kind of clicking into that tradition. And then there's this line, anger is an energy, which is yes, punk rock is about anger, and kind of harnessing that anger and using it to affect change and not seeing it as something that is shameful, but as something to be embraced as an empowering thing, right? And what what we say about anger now is that anger is a secondary emotion, so it's sort of anger is something that is like chosen, and not something that is natural, I guess, which is just this idea, this division between nature and human, it's one of the classic dichotomies, along with the idea that the written word, this is something that Derrida talks about, that the written word is somehow secondary. So this kind of this interesting thing that we're in this song he's talking about. I don't know if he knows Derrida or what, but he's talking about the written word and how it's not real. But then he's also talking about anger, how it is real, because like an energy is a real thing. Energy is real. Energy is proven by science, by physics. So there is this, like, I see like there is this kind of juxtaposition between the artificial and the real here, and that like that the written word is artificial, but anger, he's saying, is real, and very contrary to the idea that anger is a secondary emotion. Fear, and that idea, fear and greed and all these things are supposed to be, or not even greed, but yeah, fear. I guess fear. I don't know what else. So, there are these primary emotions, and then there's secondary emotions. Oh, primary. Oh, love is a secondary emotion too. Joy is a secondary emotion. Primary emotions: pride, regret, anxiety, shame. Secondary: love, joy, fear. So I don't even know how somebody would say, oh, it's primary emotions are. Oh, I guess this is a different. I'm looking at something different. This thing says that anger is a primary emotion, and says that depression and pride and happiness and frustration are secondary emotions. Who knows? I think that the idea of it is actually of separating secondary and primary emotions. I'm not sure if I agree with that anyway. But I can see the comparison between writing and speaking and anger and guilt and pride. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So Johnny Rotten anger is an energy. I think that's a it's kind of counter in a way. Um, I don't think that in our time we want to accept that anger is a actual legitimate pathos that could contribute to the ethos of a cause. A ethos being an ethic, and pathos being the emotion behind the connection, showing that it's real. And I think that anger can show authenticity, actually, and that's sort of, I think, what this song Rise is about, is that there is that in an authentic, when an idea is authentic, it is kind of connected to emotion, and we could write off somebody as being being mad, being a madman, being crazy, if they're not, if the emotion shows through too much. But that's kind of a fallacy in a way. It's not really true. It's actually more true that if you really believe something, you might feel it and you might show that feeling. That doesn't mean that if you feel something that is true, that it doesn't mean just because you feel something that it is the truth. But it's the feeling of something is actually a level of realization, or of actualizing, I think, the truths that we learn. And the feeling can create a conviction, and a feeling can change the way we behave in a way. And we see anger as a negative, bad thing, but anger, even in the Bible, right? Anger is Christ was angry at the money changers. The prophets were angry at the rulers of the land. And the reason they were angry was because they actually knew the truth, and the truth did not harmonize with the behavior of people around them, and the people of power, And so anger really can be a very positive and good thing. It can show authenticity, but it can't necessarily show truth or reality. But there is a way of finding truth and reality among emotion, I think, and within the logic. Feeling can be a motivator, a sense of passion, or a sense of comfort or relaxation. Those things can be, they can be a reason. They can be a reason to act in a way. So they're not really necessarily opposed to reason. And then this song Rise, Johnny Rotten, as the song continues, he starts to show the anger that he's feeling, and the anger that he's feeling, kind of towards a society that, let's see, that says you can't be angry if you're this or that, really, and acknowledging that either way the gains aren't really that high anyway. There is such thing as rebirth, though, and then there's this line, "May the road rise with you," and that I think it's the heart of it, that this anger that Johnny Rotten is feeling is also connected with hope, that there is a path that can emerge, that can um, that can appear through the clearing. It can appear there's some brush or something, and you see a small see a small way through, and you walk through the brush, and then you see that there is a path, and may the road rise with you. The anger might be the motivator, and that if you can get someone's attention, maybe there will be a path there that wasn't there previously. Check out that song, Public Image Lit, Rise. Maybe you'll enjoy it, maybe you won't, maybe you'll think about what he has to say. Could be wrong, could be right.